Hi there, thanks for joining me for my second photography vlog. In this episode, I visited several more locations in the California desert, such as Joshua Tree, Roy's, and Fawns Point. This leg of the trip was a bit of a roller coaster ride, as I experienced the gamut of human emotions, including optimism. Alright, let's get to it. Disappointment. I didn't do any vlogging last night. Joy. Yeah, it's just such a beautiful night. Embarrassment. Excitement. There she is. And even a bit of anger. It's incredibly frustrating. I like to think that I captured several decent photos on film and digital in this episode. So yeah, let's get started. Desert X was happening in Palm Springs at the time, so I had to check out a couple of the art exhibitions on the way to Joshua Tree. First up was Sleeping Figure by Matt Johnson. I took a couple of shots of this massive lounging sculpture with my X-Pan on Portra 400 film, which I think turned out pretty nicely. I also took a few digital shots and processed them in a film-like style, just to compare them with my X-Pan photos. I actually really like how these turned out. I should probably use my digital cameras more often during the daytime. The second exhibit I visited was called Liquid a Place by Turquoise Dyson. I took a couple of shots with my X-Pan here as well, also on Portra 400. This first shot is okay. It's a nice clean image, but it feels like I just took a photo of someone else's art. I like this second shot better. It shows more of the landscape and provides an alternate view of the sculpture. This third photo is my favorite. It's a straight-on shot, much like the first one, but this one feels more like a proper landscape photo, which is enhanced by the sculpture. Anyway, the sun had set and it was time to head on over to Joshua Tree to take some Milky Way photos that night. Or so I thought. Hey everybody, so I'm here at Joshua Tree National Park, and you might notice that it's not nighttime. And that is because I didn't do any vlogging last night. At the start of the night, the sky was as clear as you could possibly imagine. But then, a bunch of clouds rolled in, and kind of killed the atmosphere. So I'm hiking along the Arch Rock Trail. May as well use the daylight to scout the location a little bit. I've already been there a couple of times, but it always helps to scout out during the day, familiarize yourself with the lay of the land a bit better. I'm also going to try to hit up Heart Rock as well, and see if that might make a good foreground for a Milky Way shot. Hopefully the weather will cooperate tonight. We'll see. After spending some time relaxing and exploring the Arch Rock area, I continued along the trail in search of Heart Rock. Alright, here it is from the backside. Beautiful. But yeah, it's facing southwest, so it might work for a vertical Milky Way shot, but now's not the time of year for that. Also, vertical Milky Way shots here kind of tend to get washed out by Coachella Valley's light pollution, but maybe with a rock in the way, it might block out some of that light pollution. Maybe for a future trip, but definitely not tonight. I had one more exposure left on my roll of Portra 400, so I figured I'd shoot it here. It turned out okay, I guess. On the way back to the car, I stopped by Whale Rock. I took a Milky Way photo here back in 2016 that I like, and here it is. I would definitely capture and process it differently today than I did back then, but I still really like this photo. I then made my way to the area where Skull Rock and Elephant Rock were located. Honestly, I've never really found Skull Rock to be particularly photogenic, so I decided against shooting the Milky Way here tonight. Instead, I focused on scouting Elephant Rock and planning what compositions to try there. Given the direction I was facing, I knew the Milky Way would line up around here. I thought it would be pretty cool to have a light shining out of the elephant's eye, so I went to the other side to see if I could get one up there. So you can see the eye socket of the elephant from the backside. It doesn't look like I'm going to be able to climb up there and get a light. I then figured I could just stand from this position and point a light towards the eye socket, which would then hopefully create a glowing effect in the resulting photo. With that plan sorted, I left the park and checked into my motel where I saw these two hanging out next to my room. I have to say, it was a bit unsettling to see an attempted murder right outside my window. Anyway, I took some time to rest up and then departed for my next photography destination. So I'm heading over to Roy's right now on Route 66. They have this really cool neon sign there. You've probably seen it. This thing has been photographed to death, really. But once night falls, I'm going to take a couple of photos of it with my X-Pan and Cinestill 800T. And then after that, I'm going to head back to my motel at 29 Palms and get a little bit of sleep. After that, I'm going to head back to Joshua Tree and try to get those Milky Way photos that eluded me last night. The forecast is looking pretty favorable. Right now it's a bit cloudy, but it says that at 2 a.m. it should become clear. And that's good because the Milky Way is going to be in a great position for the photos I want to take at 2 a.m. Fingers crossed that the weather cooperates tonight. So I didn't vlog myself taking photos of Roy's sign there because the lighting was just too good and I was in a mad, desperate rush to take some photos before the lighting went away. The lighting is still pretty good, so I think I might actually go back and take a couple more photos. I took a couple of digital shots as well. They have a cleaner, more clinical look to them, but I really like the character of the film shots. Okay, so that's going to wrap things up at Roy's. Time to go back to the motel and then back to Joshua Tree. Okay, currently walking towards Arch Rock. The weather looks like it might cooperate, maybe. There's still a little patch of clouds just right at the southeast, which is precisely where I don't need it to be. But yeah, the weather forecast says that it should be clear by 2 a.m. It's looking like that might be the case because there are definitely more stars there than I saw on the drive over, so that's a good sign. All right, let's get to it. Hey, it's me. Just pausing the video here to highlight my night photography faux pas. I was shining my headlamp around rather carelessly without considering how it might impact any other nearby photographers. Now, it was a weeknight and there weren't any other cars at the trailhead parking lot, so I assumed I'd be alone. I probably should have known better though, as Arch Rock is one of the more popular Milky Way photography spots in California. So yeah, this is Chris. If you're into landscape photography, there's a decent chance you've seen his work. I was already following him on Instagram prior to this point, so it was really cool to meet him in person. Anyway, I apologized to Chris about the headlamp, but he was super cool about it. He was gearing up for a time-lapse, but hadn't actually started yet, so that was a relief. Over the next hour or so, we had a good conversation, and he recommended an elevated position where I could try for an interesting panoramic shot of Arch Rock. And here's the result. Now, the arch shape of the rock gets a bit lost from this vantage point, but otherwise I like how it turned out. Still, I really wanted to get a panoramic shot of Arch Rock with the Milky Way arcing over it, so I went down to a lower vantage point and got this shot. Now, this is the image I was hoping to get from this location, and I'm pretty happy with the result. With this shot in the bag, I said goodbye to Chris and headed back to the car. Chris, if you're watching, thanks for chatting with me and being super cool. Alright, I think I got a good shot at Arch Rock, but I'm not going to know until I get home and actually process the thing. But you will have already seen it by now, hopefully. I then made my way back to Elephant Rock to take those Milky Way photos I had planned for earlier during the day. As I was setting up my camera, another photographer switched on some red and blue LED lamps nearby. They were emitting some rather intrusive light on Elephant Rock, as you can see in this test shot. I took several test shots and they all had a similar unsightly blue or purple tint to them. Maybe that was karma for my earlier headlamp shenanigans. Anyway, I decided to process this test shot and to try to remove the effects of the LED lighting from the foreground. Here's what I ended up with. I'm actually pretty happy with the result, all things considered. This is a single 5-second exposure shot at ISO 12800. I have to say, modern photo technology is pretty amazing. I had asked the other photographer if he could turn off his LEDs, and eventually, he obliged. By that time, however, the Milky Way core had moved, so I gathered up my gear to try a different composition. When I got to the new location, things actually got a little worse. Well, I'm here at Elephant Rock, trying to take a photo. I've already exposed for the sky, so I'm good there, but I'm also trying to expose to the foreground right now, but I can't really do that because there's some guy over on the road there. He has his truck engine running and his taillights are on. It's just casting this red light on the rock. So the thing is that he knows that I'm here. He had some red lights and a blue light on for some reason earlier. He was nice enough to turn them off, but for some reason he's got his taillights on and he's just got his engine revving, and it's incredibly frustrating. Well, hopefully he'll leave soon, but oh, I think I just heard it shift gears. Oh, he's leaving. He's leaving. Oh my goodness. Ah, thank goodness for that. Okay, now I can expose to the foreground. Okay, so thankfully the guy left. I should probably say that, I recognize that I don't own the park, and if somebody wants to sit in their car with their lights on, they're free to do so. But I think there's definitely a bit of a courtesy aspect that I think was a little lacking. It's all good. I should be able to get my shot, so I'm happy. I'm all alone right now, and yeah, it's very peaceful, very calm. Having a good night, finally. Alright, now I'm gonna run over and try to do a little light painting in the eye socket there. I think it's an eye socket, but yeah, we'll see how that turns out. Here's the final image without the light painting. I used a star tracker to get some sharp exposures of the stars and combined that with the foreground. I also did some noise reduction stacking. And here's the final image with the light painting exposure blended in. The effect is a bit more subtle than I anticipated, but I really do like how it turned out. Now, I know I've been referring to the hole in the rock as the elephant's eye, but as I alluded to in that last clip, I'm actually not too sure about that. It's unclear to me if it's the eye or if it's maybe the gap between the elephant's head and trunk and the rest of its body. I don't think the lighting makes a whole lot of sense if it's the trunk gap, so I'm gonna go with it being the eye socket. I don't know. What do you see? Do you see an eye socket or a trunk gap? Let me know in the comments. Anyway, with the morning light rolling in, I packed up and headed back to the car. Okay, so it's the next day. I'm currently trying to find the elusive Ojo Oro Arch. Now, there's some guys that photographed it some time ago. They're a little cagey on the details of its location, but by piecing together some clues that I've seen from various photos, I think I have a rough idea on where to find it, and I'm currently making my way towards that general area, and I'm gonna look around and see if I can find it. Now, I found what appears to be like sort of a path towards the general direction that I want to go. So I'm just going to follow this for a little while, see where it takes me. Now, I should probably say that even if I do find it, not quite sure I'm going to come out here for a Milky Way photo. Woo, it's windy. Because I'm already uneasy as it is, walking out in total darkness when there's an actual path that I can follow. But here, there's really no path. I mean, there's like a little bit of a path, sort of. Not entirely sure it's even a human-made path or if it's just like a water channel path. I mean, you could get lost out here, particularly out in the middle of the night with virtually no visibility other than your headlamp. So it's kind of sketchy, so I'm not entirely sure I'm gonna do it or not. I guess we'll see. I think I see it all the way off in the distance. Oh ho ho! There she is. So I'm just going to take this photo with my A7R3. Got a nice framing of the mountain in the background, right through the hole of the arch. I've got some bushes in the foreground too. I think it looks kind of nice. I really wish I had my X-Pan with me. I feel like that would be a great camera to have from this perspective, but I didn't think to bring it with me. Oh well, you live, you learn. So, currently setting waypoints on my way back to the car. And I also set a waypoint to the car using Google Maps, which is a really good thing because I can't see it right now. And I'm just using Google Maps to find my way back. Always pays to think ahead. So I'm here at Fawn's Point. Decided against taking a Milky Way photo at Ojo Oro Arch just because the hike back in the middle of the night was going to be a little too sketchy for me, especially when I saw these large paw prints in the sand as I was hiking back to the car. Thinking either coyote or mountain lion. Either way, not something I wanted to run into in the middle of the night. So yeah, I decided to just stop by Faunce Point and hopefully get a couple of good Milky Way images. Firstly though, I took a few photos of the landscape in the dusk light with my X-Pan. I would have preferred to shoot these with Portra 400 or 800, but I still had some Cinestill 800T loaded in the camera, so that's what I used. I really like how they turned out, however, so no complaints. I'll always have a strong appreciation for Faunce Point. Besides the breathtaking view, I also captured my first stabilized sky Earth rotation time-lapse here back in 2016. It was very well received online, and I got a fair bit of attention from it. I've since filmed several more of those time-lapses at a variety of locations, but that first one will always be very special to me. And if you haven't seen it, here it is. So I'm here taking this pano next to this sketchy cliff face. I'm trying to get the main Faunce Point cliff with the Milky Way going over it. It's a little too wide for just a single lens, so that's why I'm doing the pano. Yeah, it's looking pretty good so far. But yeah, it's just such a beautiful night. Super clear, the stars are bright. There's a little light pollution over the Salton Sea over there, but I think that adds a little bit of character to the image, hopefully. And yeah, just a gorgeous night. Not too cold, not too hot. Yeah, can't ask for much more. And this is the result after stitching the individual exposures together. I love how the bow of the Milky Way complements the curve of the cliff in the foreground, and how they both frame the main lookout point. It gives the photo a very balanced yin and yang kind of feel. So I'm at the main point, trying to get a photo of the Badlands with the Milky Way above it. The scene's a bit too wide for the lenses that I have. Even my 14mm wasn't quite wide enough to get everything that I wanted, so I'm doing a vertical panorama with the 20mm, kind of pointing down and then raising it up, and I'll stitch together the images in post. I'm doing an interval time-lapse to kind of get several images so I can stack them for noise reduction. And yeah, we'll see how that turns out. This is the result of that vertical panorama. The rugged features of the Badlands contrasts with the ethereal beauty of the stars and creates, in my opinion, an interesting combination. As I mentioned before, in this direction there was a fair bit of light pollution at the horizon, which was emanating from the Salton Sea area. While it certainly added atmosphere, it also made it somewhat difficult to process these last two panoramic images. Adjustments made to the sky to bring out the details of the Milky Way also ended up blowing out the highlights near the horizon. Thankfully, I captured the raw images at a relatively low ISO of 1600, which allowed me to recover those highlights and tone them down in the final images. After taking that vertical pano, I took this photo from another vantage point. It's actually a bit of a selfie, as that's me on the cliff there. I had the interval function on my camera take several sequential shots, say that 5 times fast, and while that was happening, I ran over to that spot and struck a pose. Now this is definitely a classic composition at Faunce Point, but I had yet to try it myself. I really like how my version of it turned out. It evokes the feeling that I get when I go out to take photos of the night sky. So I took a photo of this really cool looking Ocotillo plant. I also tried using 2 different approaches. I tried without any light painting, and then I also tried a version with the light painting. But I'm kind of split on it. I'm not sure which one I prefer. The one without light painting I kind of like because it's more mysterious, a little darker, a little more natural looking. And the one with the light painting I like because it has a little more color, a little more depth, a little more detail. So yeah, why don't you tell me which one you prefer? I'm still trying to figure all this out. Here's that photo without the light painting. And here's that photo with the light painting blended in. So yeah, which of these do you prefer? Do you prefer the more silhouetted natural look of the unlit photo? Or the more vivid look with the light painting applied? Let me know in the comments. You know, it's interesting. These were relatively simple photos to take and process, and yet they ended up being some of my favorites from the entire trip. I guess Milky Way photos don't have to be all that complicated to be compelling. With a few decent shots captured and twilight approaching, it was time to wrap things up. I went back to the car and got a bit of sleep before getting back on the road. My next destinations were Death Valley and the Alabama Hills. Despite some early setbacks, I really enjoyed this leg of the trip. I got to revisit some familiar locations and discovered a few new ones. I'm also pretty happy with the images I captured as well. Anyway, thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this episode. Hopefully, I'll release the next episode in less time than it took to get this one out. Until then, this is Eric Brummel encouraging you to take a shot in the dark.